Cardinal Tagle was warned first, then God spoke to Pope Leo XIV. Cardinal Tagle was warned first, long before the whispers of Rome reached the ears of the faithful. It began quietly, almost unnoticed, on the very day Pope Leo XIV marked his first 100 days in office. While the world applauded his calm and measured papacy, his solar farm initiative, his drive for financial transparency, his return to the traditions of Castel Gandolfo, something deeper was stirring, something hidden, something divine. Because behind the serene smile of Leo XIV and behind Cardinal Tagle's gentle words at the Jubilee of Digital Missionaries, there was a secret, a warning only one man received. Tagle stood before 1,700 Catholic creators, speaking of God as the only true influencer, warning about lies, manipulation, even confessing how a false video of him had already spread online. But what he didn't reveal that day was this. The manipulation he feared was not just digital, it was spiritual. And then, August 15th. While the world watched the US-Russia summit, Pope Leo XIV prayed for peace from Castel Gandolfo. Millions thought it was just another papal prayer for war, but those close to him knew. This was different. His voice trembled, his eyes fixed on the heavens. Witnesses said he looked like a man who had heard something, a message so heavy he could barely carry it. Some swore the room grew still, that even the wind paused outside the villa's walls. The Vatican's agenda weighed on him. $60 million in deficits, a €1 billion pension shortfall, old scandals resurfacing. Yet none of these storms compared to the one that shook his spirit. For while the Pope wrestled with earthly burdens, Cardinal Tagle wrestled with something even greater. A warning delivered not in words, but in silence. A fire that burned in. His conscience, a dread that would not let him sleep. And then, the moment came. At the parish of St. Thomas of Villanova, Pope Leo XIV lifted the Eucharist high. His homily spoke of mercy, compassion, the Good Samaritan. Yet those in the pews felt a different weight. Like every word carried a hidden urgency, a divine echo. The faithful whispered, "Did God just speak to him?" Some swore his voice cracked as if heaven itself pressed upon his soul. Meanwhile, Cardinal Tagle, miles away, felt it too. He later admitted to close friends that he sensed a divine nudge that very hour, something that told him the church stood at the threshold of a great trial. He remembered the conclave, the moment the Spirit moved, the unease of being called papabile, and the humility that followed. But this time, it wasn't about him. It was about the Pope. And that's when the rumor spread, first among the priests, then among the bishops, then whispered through the streets of Vatican City. Tagle was warned first, but then God spoke directly to Pope Leo XIV. The timing was too perfect. Tagle's warning, the Pope's trembling prayer for peace, the sudden silence of the world when he raised his eyes to heaven. People began to ask, was this just coincidence, or was this prophecy unfolding in real time? Because if the warning was true, if God himself spoke to Pope Leo XIV at Castel Gandolfo, then the Catholic Church is standing not at the edge of reform, but at the edge of revelation. And the faithful, millions across the globe, now wonder, what did Cardinal Tagle hear first? And what did Pope Leo XIV hear after? The answer could change the Church forever. The world thought Pope Leo XIV's first 100 days were calm, measured, filled with quiet reforms and transparent gestures. But beneath that calm, a storm was brewing. Not a storm of politics, not a storm of money, but a storm of heaven and hell colliding over the soul of the Catholic Church. Cardinal Tagle was warned first. The message came like a flame in the night. Restless, unshakable, haunting. He had spoken of algorithms, manipulation, and lies online, but deep inside he knew. This wasn't just about the digital world. It was about the oldest lie ever whispered, the serpent's voice that still echoes through history. The warning pierced him. The bride of Christ will be tested like never before, and just days later, God spoke to Pope Leo XIV. It happened during his prayer for peace as nations trembled on the brink of war. The Pope's voice cracked, his eyes lifted upward, and those near him said his face turned pale, as if he had seen something invisible to all but him. A Vatican insider whispered, "He looked like a man struck by thunder, yet no thunder was heard. The factions inside the Vatican felt it too." Some cardinals aligned with reform, others clung to tradition, still others concealed their alliances like shadows behind marble walls. Ancient families, hidden orders, whispers of Freemasonry, old scandals resurrected. Every power seemed to converge at once. Yet the Pope stood between them, trembling, but unbroken. For he had heard words not of man, but of God. The Church, the bride of Christ, was entering her purification. Like gold tested by fire, like wheat sifted from chaff, the hour of trial had come. The solar farms, the financial reforms, the pensions, the scandals, these were only the surface. Beneath it, a battle of angels and demons raged in silence, spilling into the halls of the apostolic palace. And Cardinal Tagle. He carried the secret in his heart. Some say he warned the Pope before that day. Others believe heaven bypassed him and went straight to Leo XIV. But the truth is heavier. Tagle received a shadow of the warning, a tremor in his soul, while the Pope bore the full thunder. One saw the lightning in the distance, the other was struck by it. The faithful across the world began to notice the signs. At St. Peter's Basilica, pilgrims whispered that the air felt charged, as if the very stones were trembling. In the Philippines, Tagle's homeland, thousands prayed through the night, believing their cardinal stood at the threshold of destiny. In Europe, old prophecies resurfaced. Fatima, La Salette, Akita, voices of the Virgin warning of division, apostasy and fire from heaven. And still, the silence of the Vatican was deafening. No statement, no explanation, only subtle gestures, a trembling gaze, a Pope who now prayed longer and slept less. The bride of Christ is being purified. The factions are clashing. The papacy is trembling, and the voice of Jesus is echoing through Rome. But here is the question. What did God say to Pope Leo XIV? What did Tagle hear before him? And why now, at this hour, in this moment of history, has the veil between heaven and earth been pierced? Because once that answer is revealed, it will not only shake the Vatican, it will shake the world. It began with the calm papacy. Pope Leo XIV, only 100 days into his reign, seemed to the world like a gentle shepherd, measured, transparent, quietly determined. He launched solar farms, balanced finances, spoke of renewal. But heaven was not impressed by numbers, nor projects, nor policies. Heaven was watching his soul, and heaven chose the moment to speak. The warning reached Cardinal Tagle first, not in thunder, not in lightning, but in a dread so deep it shook him to silence. As he spoke before digital missionaries, 1,700 voices eager for influence, he warned against manipulation, against lies, against false lights that masquerade as truth. But inside, he knew. The manipulation he spoke of was not just in media. It was in the church itself. Wolves in red robes, shadows hiding in the Sistine, factions smiling with lips but stabbing with daggers behind the throne, and then the Pope himself. August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption. While the world watched war, while presidents bargained and soldiers bled, Pope Leo XIII lifted his eyes toward heaven. He prayed for peace, but his voice faltered. Witnesses said his hands shook. The room stilled. The bells outside rang, but no one had touched them. And in that silence, God spoke. Not to ears, but to the depths of his soul. The words remain hidden, but the weight was visible. His face paled. His eyes burned with something eternal. One bishop present whispered after, "It was as though he saw the cross suspended in the sky, and Christ himself was weeping over Rome." The factions inside the Vatican felt it. Secret societies, hidden alliances, the powerful who feared exposure, they all stirred. Some said the Pope had received a vision of betrayal. Others feared he had been told of a purification so great that even the proudest crowns in Rome would be cast down. The bride of Christ is bleeding. Scandals of abuse, trials of betrayal, a $60 million deficit, a €1 billion pension collapse, the sins of past cardinals like ghosts dragging their chains through the halls of the Curia. And yet, this is not the true battle. The true battle is unseen. The true battle is spiritual. Angels against demons. The woman clothed with the sun against the dragon, and Cardinal Tagle. He carries the first warning. At night, he cannot sleep. He knows. Heaven chose him to feel the tremor before the quake, to bear the shadow of the message before the Pope bore its full light. Tagle stands torn between humility and destiny, between obedience to the Pope and a burning sense that God has placed him at the threshold of something greater. And the faithful, millions across the earth, feel it too. In the Philippines, rosaries are prayed through the night. In Europe, old prophecies awaken. In South America, pilgrims weep before statues that seem to glow with tears. In Africa, choirs sing of Christ returning. The church is trembling. The bride is being purified, but now Rome itself is split. Some cardinals whisper, "This is the dawn of renewal." Others hiss, "This is the end of all we know." Secret meetings enshadowed. Rooms, letters sealed with trembling hands, old alliances breaking, new betrayals forming, and above them all, Pope Leo XIV prays alone. His retreat at Castel Gandolfo is no vacation. It is a battlefield. Every night he wrestles. Every morning he rises heavier. For the message was clear, though he has not yet spoken it aloud. The bride of Christ will be purified, not gently, not softly, but with fire, with storm, with a shaking that will leave no stone unturned. The faithful ask, what did God say? What warning did Tagle feel? And why now? Why at this moment, when nations teeter on war, when scandals suffocate trust, when even inside the Vatican walls shadows move like serpents? Because the time of comfort has ended. The time of trial has begun. The calm papacy of Pope Leo XIV was only a veil, a fragile curtain hiding the storm. The bride of Christ, the Catholic Church, was no longer standing in peace. She was standing on the edge of a sword. Every faction, every hidden alliance, every cardinal who whispered in secret halls, they all felt it. Something had shifted. Something had been spoken from heaven itself. Cardinal Tagle carried the warning. He had felt it first. A shiver of prophecy, a shadow of thunder. He had spoken carefully at the Jubilee of Digital Missionaries, warning of lies, manipulation, false lights. But his eyes revealed the truth. He wasn't just talking about the internet. He was talking about the Vatican, about the church, about wolves hiding in the fold. And then Pope Leo XIII. He heard the voice. During his retreat at Castel Gandolfo, while nations wrestled with war, while scandals tore at the church's reputation, while the Vatican counted its debts, the Pope lifted his eyes toward heaven. And God spoke. Not through angels, not through visions, but directly, like lightning splitting the soul. Witnesses said his hands trembled. The candles flickered, though. No wind was there. Some swore they saw tears in his eyes, not of sorrow, but of fear. For what he heard was not comfort. It was warning. It was purification. The bride of Christ must be cleansed. And so it began. Cardinals against cardinals, some pushing for radical reforms, others clinging to ancient traditions, and still others hiding their sins behind red robes. The papacy itself became a battlefield. Freemason whispers, old money, old secrets, hidden archives pulled from dust. Tagle stood at the center, humble, quiet, yet chosen. His warning had been a shadow. The Pope's revelation was the fire. Together they formed a mystery the world could not yet understand. And as the Pope prayed, the Church began to feel the cracks. In Africa, statues wept blood. In Asia, visions of the Virgin multiplied. In Europe, old Marian prophecies returned with force. In South America, pilgrims collapsed in ecstasy at Mass. The whole world was trembling with signs, as if creation itself was screaming, "The hour has come." But here lies the twist, the divine surprise, the epic truth no one saw coming. The warning to Tagle, the message to Pope Leo XIV, was not only about the Church. It was not only about Vatican walls or cardinal factions. It was about Jesus Christ himself returning in power and glory. The voice of God declared, "The bride will be purified, because the bridegroom is near." This is why the Pope trembled. This is why Tagle could not sleep, because heaven had spoken what no one dared believe. The purification is not to prepare for centuries of reform, but to prepare for the coming of the King. And so now, Rome waits. The cardinals plot, the faithful pray, the world watches, but only a few know the truth. Cardinal Tagle was warned, Pope Leo XIV was spoken to, and the Catholic Church, the bride of Christ, is about to face the final hour. And when that hour strikes, the Vatican itself will shake, the nations will tremble, and the whole world will see what no one expected. Jesus is coming,